and thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark TV. You know who I am, Dr. Angela Butchester. I am so glad that you are here. I don't know about you, but we are ready to enlighten, inspire, and empower you to become your best self today. Well, I am excited to have on author Dianne Porter, and we'll be talking about her book today, My Mother's Way of Dying Well. Now, you know what I'm going to tell you to do? Go on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee or get your tea, because we are about to get started. Hello, Dianne. Thank you so much for joining me today on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela.
Hello, Dr. Angela. Lovely to see you again.
You as well. I am so excited to be able to share your book with Daily Spark TV audience. You were on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela on radio, and I was excited to have you on radio. So glad you're able to join me here on TV. Well, let's get started because I can't wait to share your book with the viewers today. With that being said, can you tell us a little bit about who you are? There may be some people out there that are unfamiliar with you or your book.
Okay, I'm Dianne Porter. I am now retired from nursing after 30 years in aged care. And when my mother and father were dying, I kept a journal of all the important details because I found my memory wasn't working very well. So apart from writing my journal in my busy life, I'm a grandmother. I've got a lovely grandson. I am a mother-in-law, which is wonderful. I'm a musician and I run Jam Along in Canberra. And I also, when we haven't got COVID-19, host Shape Notes Singing, which comes from your country. And I really enjoy the 4-part a cappella harmony. So I'm kind of a very active person, run Canberra Christian Writers Group, and we produce an annual anthology. So I keep myself very busy. I was at a book launch this week for one of our members. I went to Gundagai for her launch.
I love it. And I love that you are staying busy. I think that that's really kind of the key to life in keeping yourself busy, but busy with those things that you really love. It keeps that joy flowing through. At least that's my 2 cents worth. So I agree with you there. Now, being an author, is that something that you've always wanted to do, or did you find that life simply presented the opportunity?
In my case, life presented the opportunity because I found dealing with the emotions of my parents' time of dying, including my mother's. My father died first, mother second. I found trying to share information with my husband was really difficult because I was so emotional at the time. And I said to him frequently, look, I can't talk. I want to tell you what's happening, but the emotions are too strong. So if you go to work, I'll write you a letter and then you'll know what's going on and we can correspond that way. So when I needed to tell him something important, I just couldn't get it out because I was blubbering, I would write him a letter at work. And he's the one who said, Di, this stuff is so good. You need to write a book. And that's why I wrote it. He said too. I'm a very obedient wife.
I love it. And what an amazing husband for having that suggestion, right? The partnership worked out well. And you know, you're right. So many times we do find a bit of freedom when we're able to write a letter. I know that many young children as well as teens, when I was growing up, that was one of the ways that we chose to communicate with our parents, because you were afraid to ask those personal questions, like those, puberty questions. And writing a letter or leaving that note for mom or dad was a great way of getting the information and keeping everyone in the loop. And I think we still kind of do a version of that. Letter writing, texting, we still want to inform people, but the way that really allows us to still be ourselves. I love it. Now, the title of your book, My Mother's Way of Dying Well. I like the qualifier. Why was it important to include the word well?
Well, I believe that the end of your life is a very important time, and Jesus' death on the cross is crucial to Christianity. So dying well is important. And my mother really wanted to die well. She didn't want to leave unfinished business that she couldn't have taken care of. She only wanted to leave behind what she couldn't do herself. So that, because she knew there'd be work, but she didn't want it to be overwhelming. And so that's why well is in there. She wanted to die well. She wanted to die with dignity, with good pain management, but also with an opportunity to communicate with everybody who visited her. And because she had palliative care, she was able to do that. And I was really happy for her that it worked out that way. Does that answer what you wanted?
Absolutely, absolutely. I love that. And such a mindful way of dealing with end of life issues. I think that for so many people, they don't want to talk about, first and foremost, they don't want to talk about death and dying. They, oh, that's morbid. I don't want to wish that upon you. However, it is a very important part of the life cycle, and we should be responsible during that time. What a great thing that your mother did by trying to put it all together while she was still here with you. I love it. I love it. Now, would you say that your book is the ideal book for someone who is going through that end of the life stage with their parent? Is it for the caretaker? Is it for the person going through the stage? Or is it just for anyone who wants to know, how can I best even take care of a parent, though they may not be at the end of their life yet?
I actually think it covers just about everything you've mentioned. There were many people I had to communicate with: doctors, nurses, hospital staff, family members, friends of family, neighbours who didn't know. But also, because the book covers from well before my parents died, it covers it touches on preparation, like end of life planning, setting up a power of attorney. So it can be seen as a little manual. One of my friends said she's got notes in my book. She's read it several times because her father died last year. And she said, your information was so helpful. I've got notes and little tags in it so that when I got to all the different stages, I knew what to expect. And I'm so grateful you talked about your father's death, because when I saw my father dead, I had an understanding of what to expect. It wasn't quite so frightening. And if I hadn't read your book, I may have been more terrified than I already was. So that was very encouraging to me. I didn't have every possible death you can have in my family, but I had a lot of deaths, and we had ones where the police came to the door to let us know that someone had died in the family. So I had all those things you see in the movies, they happened to me. And I went, wow. So I wrote all that down because I went, wow, when this really happens, this is how I really felt. And for me, hearing someone else's story about an event informs me of how I might deal with that. And in my book, what I've hoped to do is give people a chance to look in that mirror of my experience so they can see their own perhaps.
Absolutely. And I love that you have shared those times with the rest of us in order for the rest of us to grow when the time is appropriate for those who read the book. Thank you for that sharing. Now, do you think that this book has changed your life in any way?
Absolutely. I don't think any stone has been left unturned. I really mean that. I didn't know that was the result. When I started the book, I was just putting together a collection as a kind of, well, yeah, this is probably a good idea. Well, as a nurse, you know, it was really nice to see what the family went through, the other side, if you like, of the dying process, because I've been with many people who've died. Yeah, I have totally changed. I am now myself. When my mother died in particular, I was no longer mummy's little helper. I was no longer co-parent to my siblings. I was sort of in our family, I was kind of little mother. And suddenly when my mother died, so did I in a way. Little mother died as well. Took me a long time to understand little mother had died in me and realize I could be who I am. I could be myself. But I was so intense. I really had a close relationship with my mum, and I was very intent on her care and her needs, and I forgot my own. So the last 10 years have been about remembering me and starting to say, what do I think is important, which is why I now do the Shape Note singing. The thing I really love is running the Canberra Christian Writers Group. I absolutely love that. I love talking to other authors. So if you like, being an author and becoming a micro publisher just for my little group is my new life. And I would never have thought ever I would be an author and a convener of a group that actually publishes an annual anthology. So that's been an amazing journey. Writing the book was about discovering my new self. I needed to finish that work to know that. So now I know it, but I didn't when I started. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. It absolutely does, because as you were talking and explaining that, it made me think about my own transition with dealing with breast cancer, and how when I talk about the stages, once you're well, so many people get caught in their story. I have breast cancer. Well, what happens when you don't? You know, now you're well, and you are you're cancer free. Your story has changed. Now you have permission to be this new person. Who are you going to be? Don't get stuck there. And it made me think about what you were saying. Your position in the family had changed, and now you have permission to be exactly who Dianne wants to be and needs to be. And how that's an interesting place to be. And what does that mean? I love it. Well, it is time for us to go to break. And what a perfect place we can contemplate, who do we want to be in this new stage of life. Before we do, though, can you please remind everyone, what is the title of your book? Where can we get a copy? And of course, how do we stay in contact with you?
Yes, my copy of my book is called My Mother's Way of Dying Well. The new version has got revisited at the end of it, and that was just released in February this year. So My Mother's Way of Dying Well Revisited, just go to Google and you'll find it at your favourite bookseller.
Alrighty, everyone. Now you know where you can get a copy of the book. We'll be back right after this.
A natural disaster may force you to evacuate, and the coronavirus could impact your emergency plans. So take steps now to help your family and community prepare. Keep a supply kit stocked with cloth face coverings, disinfecting supplies, and hand sanitizers. Check with local officials about what shelter spaces will be open during quarantine efforts. And remember to review the CDC's guidelines with the whole family. Disasters won't wait. Neither should you. Visit ready.gov/plan to make a plan today.
This is my book, My Mother's Way of Dying Well Revisited. If you go to your website and type up My Mother's Way of Dying Well, you'll be able to find my book on the website, and Book Trail Agency as the agent that produces it. It will be available on Amazon as well. You can contact me by just typing the name of my book, and you'll find my website, because it's under the name My Mother's Way of Dying Well. And there is a contact sheet, so you can contact me through that. Other than that, I hope to see you around.
Have the past few weeks or months been challenging? Yes, for all of us. We've been thrown into circumstances which we could never have imagined. Loss of jobs, working from home, general uncertainty, all while dealing with COVID. It's causing us to be a little on edge. If you need someone to talk to, Dr. Angela Chester can help. Visit newlifepastoralcounseling.com to get started. We're in this together.
Welcome to Daily Spark TV. Are you an author with a faith-based book? Be a guest. Serious about your product or service and want to try something new? Sponsor an episode. I see you're ready to get started. So visit drangela.chester.com. Thanks again for watching Daily Spark TV.
And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark TV. I'm your host, Dr. Angela Chester. My guest today is Dianne Porter, and we're talking about her book, My Mother's Way of Dying Well. Now, Dianne, my next question for you is a subject that, again, we kind of touched on that people don't want to talk about, and that is planning a funeral. We've seen some very beautiful and heartwarming funerals. Someone had to plan that. It doesn't just happen. What are some things that people should think about when you're nearing that stage or you find yourself there?
I think it's good to talk about whether you want cremation or burial or to become a tree. You know, these days you have so many choices. It's really good to have that conversation early when you start thinking about it. We've had it in our house. I want to be cremated, for example. That way, the decision essentially is made when the event actually happens. In terms of the service, my parents were very strongly committed to having all of their children at their funeral. And so they didn't want to have a church service or a priest present. In our family, like in every family, so you've got atheists and you've got Christians. So to enable all of us to come, my parents wanted us to do the funeral ourselves, do it our own way. So they knew we would each be talking about them as ourselves. So we would just tell little stories about what did I love about Dad, what did I love about Mum. And that's what we did for my mother's funeral as well. I found that really lovely. The thing we didn't plan was what would happen with the ashes, and Mum didn't know about that. So what I did there was we scattered the ashes everywhere. I sent parcels of those to the family members so they could dispose of those at their own pleasure where they felt was appropriate for them.
I love that you decided to do it in an environment where everyone was able to participate and share and feel comfortable. I think that that is really, really important. And, you know, it is important for us to know who we are and the type of people that we come from, and choosing to do the little things can be quite important. So I do understand why you may have chosen to do that. That's a very interesting point that you made. I love that my family has tried to pass on quite a few traditions as well to reflect all of the cultures that make us who we are. So I can understand why that would be key. Now, as far as determining who will participate in a funeral, do you think that that is a hard decision to make? Here in the States, we have a moment of reflection where everyone is allowed to speak for those 2 minutes. Do you think that when you have a large family, determining that 3 or 4 family members out of 20 who want to share, because all of a sudden there's a cousin who wants to share, a little sister, the big sister, the eldest brother, the youngest brother, the best neighbor, everyone wants to put in. How do you determine, or is there a way that can make it easier to figure out who gets to speak and who doesn't?
In my parents' case, they had closed funerals, so only people who were invited could come. And we didn't give a public notification of the funeral until a month after they had been dealt with. So after the service was over and the cremation and everything had happened, we then announced it publicly. So there was, in our case, a selected number of people who came to the funeral. So we already knew who was going to be there. So basically everybody could speak because the numbers were not huge. We didn't have like 50 or 60 people in the room. We only had the immediate family and some selected close family friends. That was my parents' choice. So it was very small and intimate in our case. If I was dealing with a bigger funeral, I can't really answer that in a way because I didn't have to deal with that issue. What I've seen my friends do, though, is they had certain invited guests, and I have musician friends. So in some cases, we've been the invited guest and we've just sung a song that connected with the person who died. And the service being larger was well coordinated. It was planned. So people delayed the funerals for a week to allow that planning to happen. And then there was a program and you just went into your allotted spot. It's really at the wake after the funeral's over, that's when people get a chance to tell the stories in larger funerals. But in our case, we had already knew the numbers. So the planning was much easier. Planning is good and allowing time. So if you need to delay the funeral so that people can get there, just do what you need to do. The funeral directors I find very helpful, particularly when you're really stressed. They say, this is what we've seen other people do. These are some choices. Which one do you think is going to work for you? So that's what my answer is to that question.
And I think that that's really good advice. I think that that's really good advice if you have someone that is especially traveling from another country or quite a distance. It's not going to be the same as someone who's only traveling, let's say, even 100 miles away from you. Even from coast to coast, it could be quite some time. So that is definitely good advice there. Now, would you say that when it comes to when your parents pass away, you find out bits and pieces about who they are simply because people do share stories and because you are executor of their will, or there's certain responsibilities that you have. Do you think that this has allowed you to better understand who your mother was as a woman, as opposed to just being your mother?
Yes, I do think so. My mother was like the central star in a constellation. So if you imagined there was my mother's constellation, just her family, but her friends had a constellation. All her connections were like constellations of worlds. So when you heard the stories, you heard what was the world like for her when she went to the bridge group? What was the world like for her when she went to church? What was the world like for her when she visited her friends who she went through the Second World War with together? So each time somebody would tell a story, they were saying, for example, do you remember the time when the troop trains used to come down from Hornsby? You could hear them coming for miles. So you'd hear these sorts of stories, and suddenly you are in the window of a world that was there before you were even born. So I got a real sense of what it was like for my mother to hear the troop trains coming down to Sydney proper during the Second World War. And it was like being really there because the people who were talking at the time were really there. And that was wonderful. So it was like this world came to life. Other family members, a cousin, had gone to their very first ski trip with my mum and dad. And she said it was just wonderful. She didn't know how cold snow was. But then suddenly I was transported to that ski trip and to the first experience this woman had of snow with my parents. So I got a chance to see my parents as very empowering people. They worked with people to empower them to be who they were. They were very kind people, my mum and dad, very generous. Lots of things they did, they didn't make a fuss about, but they were very helpful to many people. It was just how they lived. So that was lovely to discover from the recipient's point of view. I'd seen some of these things happen, but I hadn't had their sense of that experience. And that was lovely to discover.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I find that to be one of the beautiful portions, if you will, of the gathering. A sad occasion, but the beauty of sharing those stories and trying to relive that moment or see that moment through their eyes is always a beautiful experience. So thank you for sharing that. Now we are out of time, but I want to thank you so much, Dianne, for spending time with us here today and for not only sharing your story of what you learned along the journey of making sure that your mother was treated with the love and the respect that you wanted to honor her with, but that you shared the story of dying well with the rest of us. Now, before I let you go, if you could please remind us one last time, what is the title of your book? Where can we get a copy? And of course, how do we stay in contact with you?
Yes, my book is called My Mother's Way of Dying Well. The new version has revisited at the end of it. It's sold through Book Trail Agency. But if you Google it, if you just put it on Google or on Amazon, you will find it. My Mother's Way of Dying Well Revisited. And you can go to the outlet that you want to purchase it from.
Thank you again, Dianne, for being a guest on Daily Spark TV. And viewers, thank you for spending time with us here as well. We hope that we have enlightened, inspired, and empowered you today. As always, may the Lord continue to shine his face upon you. May you receive his grace and his mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, remember that you are blessed in the Lord. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Hi, do you have something to share? Be a guest. Want to sponsor an episode? Visit drangela.chester.com. Thanks again for watching Daily Spark TV.